Hey, what's up, guys? So this video is a shout out for my friend Carol Reynolds. Hi, Carol. She's been a long time subscriber, so loyal to me, and such a good friend. So she had sent me pictures through my Etsy shop showing me her beautiful Kestner doll, and it's a 154 model. And I wanted to show her mine. So I have more than these, but these two are small enough for me to show you right now. And so these two are their 154 mold that Kestner had made. Now, Kestner was known as the king of doll makers in Germany. They were in business since 1816, making toys and wooden novelties. Now, they started out making dolls out of like paper mache, and then they started in China head dolls, and then they went into the bisque. And one of their most known dolls are these bisque type dolls. These two girls here, these are my sisters, they're two sisters, are the 154 mold. And the 154 mold is the most common Kestner doll mold you'll see out there. So when you're collecting antique German bisque head dolls, this is the most common Kestner doll you will see. Now, this was a very popular mold for Kestner because it was so loved by people, and lots of toy makers actually try to copy this type of face, and they could never get it as good as Kestner. Now, loads and loads and loads of toy stores would always order this particular model to be sold because when Kestner made it, he prolifically made it, meaning that he made so many of them. He made hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of this particular mold. And that's why you will still find them out there. Now, a lot of the stores would order this particular mold because they weren't as expensive as some of the other molds that Kestner had made, especially his composition jointed body dolls. These were actually dolls that were on leather kid leather bodies with bisque hands, and they were cheaper to make. And so this was more geared to a lower middle class customer or a middle class customer. These dolls, when they were sold for about $1 a piece, which in today's money would probably be anywhere between $20 to $30. And it wasn't that expensive. Now, the taller ones, the much bigger ones, of course, would sell for more money. And a lot of times they did come dressed. Some of them did not come dressed. They were sold, and then mommies would actually make the dress for their children, or the little girl would learn how to sew by making a dress for her doll. Now, some of them, when they did come dressed, they would come with the original shoes. This one has lost her other shoe, and this one actually has no shoes. I have to get her some shoes. But what's really cool about these dolls is when they were dressed, they dressed them so well. And it's like a miniature version of the fashion of the day. So now the 154 dolls were made sometime, they were made for decades actually. That's how popular they were. And they were made sometime from the very, very late 1890s, and more so at around 1900 to about 1915, believe it or not. So this doll had been made for decades. So you will see some Kestners, and some of them will have what's known as windpern eyelashes. So windpern was actually, I believe, invented and started to be made by Simon Halbig in about 1905. Simon Halbig, and to save a step with painting their dolls, they didn't paint the upper lashes. And so what they did was they took mohair lashes and glued them onto the eyelid wax of the sleep eyes. And so you'll see some Kestner dolls, the later ones, without upper painted lashes. They will actually have those little hair lashes. And so when you see that, you know you have a doll that was made after 1905. So also, they did also in 1905 and after, they also had some models with upper painted lashes. It wasn't that they stopped doing that. Now, the model of 154 had an open mouth with teeth, and most of them had sleep glass eyes. I have some in my collection that actually have steady eyes or paperweight eyes that are actually don't sleep. It's very rare because most of the dolls had sleep eyes. They don't have pierced ears. Some German dolls had pierced ears, but mostly they didn't because the French did that. But Simon Halbig, a lot of their dolls have pierced ears. Some Bar and Proschchild dolls had pierced ears, but Kestner's never did have pierced ears. So that's another dead giveaway that your doll was made by Kestner. But the way to find out truly is you take the wig off, and on the back of the head, when you look at the back of the neck area or the back of the shoulders, you'd have to pull down the clothes to see that, or underneath the kid leather. Sometimes it was actually the kid leather was affixed over the shoulders, like partially over the shoulders. You'd have to like peek under that kid leather to see a number. And when you see the number, you can look up that number on the internet and you can find out who made your doll. Now, Kestner's logo was a crown with streamers. So sometimes on the kid leather body, when you take the clothes off, you'll see a crown with leather streamers. And sometimes it was stamped on with blue ink, or they had affixed labels, actual labels that were colored. And so that's another way to tell. Now, this particular doll has her factory original dress, and this one was dressed also in the factory. And that's really quite lovely to see. Now, both of them don't have their original wigs, and a lot of times their wigs actually become so distressed that people, especially in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, had removed the original wigs, which is sort of a sacrilege, and had taken the wigs off and thrown them away and placed these ugly, and I'm telling you guys, they're so hideous, most of these wigs, and replace them with something called mode acrylic or nylon or acrylic wigs. And when you see that, it's really blasphemous. So what I did was, since these dolls actually came with their original wigs that were so distressed they couldn't be saved, I replaced them with high quality mohair wigs that you could still buy today. The high quality mohair wigs are not cheap. They sell anywheres, for a good wig, anywheres between, I'd say, $30 to $75 for really, really good goat mohair wigs made by, like, say, Wendy Fate, who actually is a doll artist, and she makes beautiful wigs too. Those wigs could sell anywheres between $75 to $175. These were purchased from a website that actually sells antique style wigs. I think I got these wigs for like $40 a piece, which is actually cheap for a good wig. Now, what's really cool is, again, we're missing one of the shoes, but this is what one of the shoes looked like. Now, when you see the original shoes, a lot of times they'll be made out of leather with little buckles, or they'll be made out of something called oilcloth. And it was a fake leather that was actually made out of like paper that they covered with a fabric, and it was like a canvas that they painted to make it look like leather. She has her original stockings, which are like very, very pretty. They have like lace, almost like laced netting. She has her original pantaloons, and these dolls generally, when they made them in the factory with the clothes, they really, really, made them look like real, real, real clothing of the day. And here's a slip with lace. And that's beautiful. And again, her original cotton and lace dress, and we have this beautiful bow right here on the top, and again the bodice is all cotton with lace, and just beautiful. Her hat is original. It's made out of like taffeta and these curly ostrich feathers, which is quite beautiful. And then we have this one over here. Actually, let me move her into the light. The lighting is horrible in my house right now. And again, she's a 154. Now, some of these 154 dolls, depending on how tall they are, or what kind of wig they're wearing, or what color eyes they have, can look completely, completely different from each other, where you would never even like be able to tell like a Kestner made it. Like sometimes the brunette ones have a completely different look, and they won't look like, say, this one. And a way to also tell a Kestner doll, if you haven't checked for the mold number on the back of the head or the crown and streamer mark, is their lips. So let me show you this neat thing about their lips. So if you look at their lips, right in the corners, they're turned up. That's a Kestner trait that really, if you really start collecting Kestner dolls, you'll know it over time. You'll know this is a Kestner doll. Again, you see her the corners of her lips are turned up with the paint. That was, like I said, their trait. And again, these beautiful feathered eyebrows that Kestner did was wonderful. Now, you'll see a lot of dolls made by, say, lesser quality doll makers by the name of Armand Marseille. And their eyebrows were generally painted with one brush stroke. But Kestner dolls, almost always, except for the very teeny tiny ones, were feathered and, they had a very, very well painted modeling that gave them an expression. Like the Armand Marseille dolls really don't have much of an expression to them because their eyebrows aren't painted that well. Again, we have this doll on a kid leather body with bisque hands. And underneath her dress, she has her original pantaloons and slips. And that's always really nice to see. Now, the way to tell like if your dress is original is always check out the fabrics. A lot of times people will replace these dresses because they get stained or torn or dirty. Now, this was a practice that actually a lot of people started doing sometime in the 40s and really, really badly in the 60s and 70s. They would take the original dresses that actually weren't even that in bad condition and they would actually throw them away, which is such a shame. And you'll see a lot of the fabrics are very, very bad fabrics. They're made out of rayon and nylon and polyester. And that's how you can tell your dress isn't that old. But generally, when you see quality cotton like this with beautiful, beautiful lace that's not made out of nylon or rayon or polyester, you'll know that this is original fabric. Again, this fabric here is like a silk, almost like a silk material mixed with some kind of like linen blend. And it's a very, very thick fabric. Now, that's another problem. If you have a silk dress, an antique silk dress on your antique doll, you have to be very careful in preserving it well. The problem was with these silk dresses is that over time, silk disintegrates and doesn't wear well. What will happen is the silk will melt and your dress will actually shred and fall apart. So you have to be very, very careful in preserving the old dresses. Do not keep your doll near sunlight, near a window. Keep it away from the sun. It'll also fade the color dyes from that time. The sun always fades the dye from that era, from the late Victorian to the early 20th century. Cotton actually can last a lot longer. I have cotton dresses on my antique dolls from dolls that were from the 1860s that are in pristine condition, but silk never, ever, ever wears well. So you'll never see a silk dress that will last 100 years without problems. So this is basically it. I am trying to think of any other facts I can tell you about the Kestner 154 model. But again, this was their most prolific model. You'll see most of the Kestner dolls with 154 marked on them. And they all have different looks depending on their wigs, their clothes, how big they were. And that's basically it. So if you have any questions about these old dolls, write in the comments below. I'll be more than glad to help you. If you have a doll in your collection that you need to be identified who the maker was and how old it is, contact me. Tell me what the numbers are on the back of the head or the shoulder, and I'll be more than glad to help you figure out who may have made your doll and how old it was. So once again, thanks for watching, guys, and have a great evening. So long.